Wow. Democrats, I'm starting to feel just a little bit sorry for them. I mean, in the political sense, not in the normal human being sense. Since the loss of Hillary to Donald Trump, it's been over a year now. They've struggled. They've done everything they possibly could to paint this guy out to be a racist, a misogynist. He's a homophobe. He's an Islamophobe. He's this, he's that, using the old strategy. Well, if you say it long enough and loud enough, sooner or later it will become conventional wisdom, and then we'll have a shot at something again. Well, didn't work. At least not to anybody that's got two functioning brain cells. Still, Democrats are big with the millennials, big with, the hardliner, liberals. That's not going to change. Pelosi lost her mind, what is left of it, and I don't mean to be ugly, other than, there is the old adage of staying too long at the party. She stuttered and stammered her way through a conversation over the release of the GOP memo, the FISA memo we talked about. Remember when we were going off the air last night? They did have a vote to release it, and now it's up to El Presidente whether or not he's going to release it. Personally, I'd like to see him read it line for line as he gives probably an unconventional State of the Union address tonight. I gotta be honest with you, this is bigger than the Grammys and the Oscars and all the rest. By the way, if you're out and about, you can tune in to News Talk 820 WBAP. We'll cover it live for you beginning at 8 o'clock, and then a little later, Chris Crock will be taking your reaction. But in the meantime, the question is he going to use the memo? I know, I get it. He wants to come off as bipartisan, and can't we all get along, and here's a Pepsi, let's hold hands up on a hill, and everything will be fine, and let's work together, boom shakalaka laka boom shak. No, that's not President Trump. Now, a lot of aides to this administration are saying you're going to see a different kind of Donald Trump tonight. I don't want to see a different kind of Donald Trump. I want him to come out, as I said, at the risk of being redundant, figuratively speaking, both barrels blazing, calling people out by name. You want to drain the swamp? Fine. Call them out by name. At least that'll give the assembled press somebody to go talk to. Not that they'll do much investigative journalism, but still, call them out by name. Pelosi, what are you doing? Chuck Schumer, why'd you back up? I mean, that's what I want to see. And then, as the cherry on top the sundae, read the memo, the FISA memo, line by line. I think it's 4 pages, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of the State of the Union. Now, some of you are still, you got your nose all scrunched up and your eyes are almost shut, and you can just barely stand to leave the radio on with this Rick Roberts guy talking about the State of the Union and Donald Trump. I know. I get it. It wasn't that long ago that your guy, was giving his last State of the Union and talking about stuff really, really serious. Yeah. Remember that?
How do we make technology work for us?
I don't know.
And not against us.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to solving urgent challenges like climate change.
Well, there you go. There's the biggest problem on my plate. How about you? Yeah, that comes from Obama's last State of the Union. And, I was wondering and thinking and going back through the archives, what did he think of the immigration system?
And I will keep pushing for progress on the work that I believe still needs to be done.
What? What's that?
Fixing a broken immigration system.
Well, you didn't get that done, did you? Okay, well, we got the DACA folks, we got the Dreamer folks. He also wanted tax cuts and the Affordable Care Act. Who can forget the Affordable Care Act? Not me.
Basic benefits should be just as mobile as everything else is today.
Yeah.
That, by the way, is what the Affordable Care Act is all about. It's about filling the gaps in employer-based care so that when you lose a job, or you go back to school,
right,
or you strike out and launch that new business, you'll still have coverage.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. And certainly it worked out that way, didn't it? I don't want to see historically what we all see at the State of the Union for presidents. I want Trump to be Trump. Come out there swinging. I don't care. I mean, just to use all that pin-up anxiety and angst and all the stuff he's got, he has to have after a year, fighting everybody, fighting the Democrats, fighting the lamestream media, fighting people within his own party, fighting everybody. Just let it go. Use that podium as a decompression chamber. Call people out by names, Republicans and Democrats. You never Trumpers within the GOP, as in, and then just fill in the blanks, the names. Democrats, fill in the names. No more Mr. Nice Guy. What's the guy got to lose? Certainly not money. He's given his salary away. He's got a bigger house than the White House. What's he got to lose? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So that's what I'm hoping for. I really, really hope that Donald Trump walks up there. Don't even wear a tie. You know what I mean? Don't even wear a tie. Just walk up there and, how y'all doing? Doing okay? All right. Everybody, at the doors, everybody in here? All right. Cause I'm not starting over. You ready? Let's roll. And then just do it. I guarantee you, if I were Trump, I would do that. Let's go to Steve. Steve, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Steve?
I'm well, thanks. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. The reason I called, I think a lot of people have been pointing fingers at who is responsible for the FISA warrants, the leaks, the corruption. And my question is a lot bigger than all of this. The question is, why was it done? And I think the reason comes down to the previous administration had so much corruption that they're willing to risk it all to cover it up. That's my feeling.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, you may be right. I don't know. I agree with you about the previous administration, although the media did a better job of covering up than the third coat of paint on my house. The media didn't tell us anything. But you're right. I think you're right. Should the president read the FISA memo that so much news has been flowing back and forth, should he read it at the State of the Union?
You know what? This is a State of the Union. He's got enough. I think he's got enough ammunition at this point. And I have my own feeling about his Twitters and everything else. He lowers the dignity of the office by doing stuff like that. When he fights with Jay-Z or whomever it was, that rapper, and that idiot congresswoman from wherever she's from.
Well, that's a personality trait. He doesn't. If you want to get his attention, criticize him. Talk bad about him. He'll come after you. This is not a guy that.
I know. I used to see him all the time. He had an arrogance about him. I used to work in the World Trade Center before. He had an office there before he moved to Trump Tower, and But the problem, regardless of what he did in the past, doesn't change the fact that he's now president of the United States. When you own a company, you could, it's your company, you do what you want, but for the most part. But when you're president of the United States, there's a certain dignity that goes along with the job, and there's a certain amount of stature and class.
Well, I understand that. But, you were talking about once upon a time in the nation's capital. There was dignity in class. There's no dignity in class in D.C. I know. I've worked there. I've met those guys in abandoned warehouses that you wanted to, dish the dirt, the deep throats. There's no dignity and no class. Not at any level. Listen to Pelosi. Listen to Schumer. Listen to some of these Einsteins that think they know better than we do how to spend our money, where to eat, where to go to school, what job we should have. There's no dignity in class. I mean, all bets are off. I understand what you're saying. At one point in time, there was dignity and class associated with, I mean, you're the president of the United States. You're in the people's house. You're in the White House. And, flowing forth all kinds of legislation, to protect the sanctity, sovereignty, and security of a great nation and all that live within her borders. That doesn't exist anymore, do you think?
No, it's all corruption now. That's, these guys want a pay raise. What do they need a pay raise for? That's not their primary source of income.
No, they don't do anything. You got to do something to get paid. Okay, listen, I'm way late in my break. I appreciate the call, Steve. Steve says he would like to see Trump come out, perhaps a bit reserved, more dignified, more presidential than he has been in the last year. I don't know if President Trump is capable of even doing that. All right, 2:20 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion, your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. And as I said before, I'm excited about this. I hope I'm not setting myself up for disappointment. Generally, a State of the Union is just blah, 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 and then blah, 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 and a couple applause, one standing ovation, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, man, I'll never get back that 45 minutes of my life. I'm hoping that's not the case here, because there's several peripheral issues involved, not the least of which the personality of Donald Trump. I don't want him subdued. I don't want him to be stoic. I don't want him to go out there and try to pretend to be what he thinks presidential looks like. I want him to be who he was on the campaign trail. This FISA memo that some people that have seen it have said, and they had to sign a confidentiality agreement, have said the American people are going to be shocked. They're not going to believe this. It's going to be the worst thing for the Democrats ever. I don't know. I haven't seen it. You can go through the list of House Democratic leaders' repeated missteps, verbal blunders. It's just too lengthy to read off. But as she's done in the past, Pelosi has outdone herself once again. Like most Democrats, Pelosi has lost her mind by the House vote yesterday, just as I was leaving the studio, to release a 4-page memo that supposedly it outlines allegations that former President Barack Obama, the Justice Department, and his hand-picked, I don't know, what do you call them? Gremlins, he picked some people at the FBI. They abused a surveillance program in order to spy on President-elect Donald Trump. Well, that's what we're told anyway. On Monday, Pelosi, after taking her meds, I assume, got into a heated argument with Chris Cuomo. He's with CNN, right? He's an anchor at CNN. When asked about the memo, she called the document, no, nothing to see here. Tip your waitress, drive safe. She called it a total misrepresentation and said it should be reviewed by intelligence officials before it's made public, which the House voted to do. At one point, Cuomo from CNN, and I can't believe this is coming from CNN. I think maybe that's one of the reasons she was so upset. He asked Pelosi why FBI Director Christopher Wray has not objected to the release of the document. Well, at that point in time, there was a lunar eclipse and Pelosi lost it. Totally lost it. And I'm quoting here, let me just say this, with all due respect, you really don't know what you're talking about right now. Then proceeded to stammer and stutter her reasons why the memo should not be released. That's been the strategy of top Democrats throughout. Argue that the memo produced by the House Intelligence Committee Chair, Nunes, a Republican out of California, I think, and his staff cannot be understood if viewed without massive supporting documentation. It's just another one of those he said, she said things. Well, Representative Adam Schiff, he's a Democrat out of California, he said last week that Congress cannot release the memo because the American public won't be able to understand it. We can't really, excuse me. I'm Adam Schiff. I'm a Democrat out of the great state of California. We can't release this memo because the American people, they won't be able to understand this. There's no way. I mean, as long as we get a Democrat to sit with each member of the American public to explain it to them. Oh, as a matter of fact, we're going to table that memo and have something done by the I don't know. We'll have pictures drawn so the American people can understand it. All right? What a moron. Wrapped in an idiot, this guy's, well, the American public won't be able to understand it. See, they say that kind of stuff, and they say it often enough that people start to believe, well, maybe they're right. Maybe the people in D.C. are smarter than I am. I'll just sit over here and be quiet until they tell me what to do. No, these people are no different than you and I, except they work in D.C. Well, because the American people, unfortunately, don't have the underlying materials, and therefore they can't see how distorted, and misleading this document is. The Republicans are not saying make the underlying materials available to the public. Well, okay, we could go on for days. Bottom line is, Democrats don't want the memo released, all right, because it's going to make them look bad. It's going to make Barack Obama look bad. But at this point, who cares? I want Trump to walk to the podium, take off his tie, maybe even take off his jacket and roll up his sleeves and tell somebody in the gallery, lock the doors. Nobody's leaving until I'm through. And just start calling people out. That's what I want to see. Am I going to see that? I don't know. Your call straight ahead. All right, 2:33 the time. By the way, I'm going to go to your calls in just a second, but two senior FBI officials have now reviewed this controversial Republican staff memo everybody's talking about, alleging abuses of government surveillance programs during the 2016 presidential campaign. They looked it over. The two officials, one from the FBI's counterintelligence division, the other from the legal division. And what did they say about it? Are you listening, Nancy? Nancy? Wake up, Nancy. FBI officials have reviewed the memo, could not cite any factual inaccuracies. Couldn't even find anything wrong with it, Nancy. So why don't you help us out again? That was fun to watch. All right, let's go to Ron in Fort Worth. Ron, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
Hey, I'm fine, Rick. Hey, great show on a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Always a good combination.
Yeah, it's a great day.
Hey, I was agreeing with you when you were talking about Trump being Trump. And if I could wave my magic wand tonight, he would actually call out those members of Congress, the senators, representatives, whatever. And if there's more than three, he should give them a name. Like, I don't know, you know better than me, invisibles. And then every time he talked about one of his key points, like the tax breaks, of course, the invisibles voted against it. Immigration, of course, the invisibles voted against it. And just go on down the line and let the American people know, not only did these people not show up, but they represent the party that voted against all these things that I've done that are so positive for America.
Well, that's probably true. I'm wondering, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, remember that? That was, I was so glad to see Trump pull out of that thing. Because it put you in bed with 12, 14 other countries, one country run by Sharia law. I mean, it was a nightmare, total nightmare, economically speaking. But then, if you just look back, maybe 12 months, what did you hear?
That's how we forged a Trans-Pacific Partnership to open markets and protect workers and the environment and advance American leadership.
Yeah, advance American. This guy, I don't even think he thought through half of what he said. He just read something somebody wrote for him. I don't want to see that with Trump. I want to see Trump do what he does, which is not scripted. It's it's not legalese. It's not politics as usual. Just do what you do.
Yeah. Turn on your tape recorder so everybody gets it straight.
Amen to that. Ron, enjoy this beautiful day. I appreciate the call very much. Tom in Fort Worth. Tom, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Tom?
I am doing wonderful, Rick, and I want to compliment you on the show, and I want to compliment President Trump in advance because I know he's going to have everyone's attention tonight.
Well, it's big. It's, like I said earlier, bigger than the Grammys, certainly, bigger than the Oscars. This is huge. This is a president which about half the people hate and half the people love. You know, which president's going to show up? Is it Donald Trump or some measure of previous State of the Unions? I hope it's the first.
I think it will be the businessman because I think he's going to review briefly his first-year accomplishments. But as any professional business person, he will also lay out his agenda for year two. And within that agenda, I surely hope he says, making America great again means getting back to being a melting pot. And let's do away with the hyphenated Americans, and let's all be one united country again. And with that as a target, we need to set English as the official language. So in the next 6 months, you have 6 months to register to become a citizen, come out from underneath the shadows, but you're going to do it in English. And I think that will set a tone. People need to realize kicking and screaming only can go on for so long. Sooner or later, you got to sit down and stop rocking the boat. And the Democrats have proven over and over and over that's about the only thing they're good at doing.
Well, I asked the question earlier in the week, will there ever be a time in this president's first term that the Democrats will say, okay, all right, we now realize we lost with a shoo-in in Hillary Clinton, and we're not going to go over the whys and the hows and all that, but now we're going to start to get to work like the founding fathers envisioned, get to work working with Republicans to try and make this a better country and a better place to live. Is that even possible at this point?
With old school Democrats, it would be, but with the progressive socialist liberals that are currently in power and entrenched in Washington, D.C., no, I think they all have to be flushed out. And then those that are of a true Democratic alignment will have to send new elected officials. They've got a clean house.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I don't think you can do that pretending to be, presidential as other presidents have been during the State of the Union. I don't think you can do that. You could do that by calling them out. You could do that by, simply calling them out and putting it in their face.
Well, you got to start by putting Nancy Pelosi in drug rehab.
Oh, you know what? I don't even know if it's drugs. I mean, I used to have a very, very strong dislike for Pelosi. Now I just feel sorry for her. It's just pathetic. She ought to be in that vineyard in California that she owns, being waited on hand and foot in her multi-million-dollar home, enjoying life. That's where she should be. But evidently, she's wired a little different.
Either that or in Alcatraz.
Okay. So I had to go there, didn't you? All right. I appreciate the call very much. Let's go to Kenny in Sulphur Springs. Kenny, I appreciate your patience. How you doing, Kenny?
I'm well, Rick. I hope you are too.
I am.
First came across you, KOA, more years ago than either of us wanted to talk about.
Oh my gosh, KOA in Denver. That was, that was the first talk radio I ever did, was at 85 KOA in Denver.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it very much, and enjoy your show today very much. And
thank you.
Somewhere I know the first little bit of the speech is going to talk about all the good things that have happened over the past year. And, we haven't really started benefiting completely from the tax cut. A lot of what's happened this past year has just been on confidence alone. And it's leadership. But I would like to see the president somewhere along after that part of the speech. A lot of the Democrat members are going to bring dreamers, which I hate that name. Don't American kids, don't they have dreams too? But that's another topic. But they're going to have dreamers sitting there with them, and I'd like to say, hear him say something like, I'm going to talk at the Democrats, but I'd like to talk to you dreamer kids. Look at who brought you to that and ask them why they didn't fix this when they had the chance. Because the truth of the matter is, the first 2 years of Obama's first term, they had complete control of Congress. They had a majority in the House. They had a supermajority in the Senate. They could have written any immigration bill that they wished. They could have legalized every illegal in this entire country and said the next 10 million that come in over the next 10 years, we're going to legalize them and give them full citizenship too. The fact of the matter is the Republicans didn't have the votes to stop anything, okay? We found that out with Obamacare. Right. They forced that down our throats without any Republican votes. They could have done the same thing with immigration, but they didn't because they knew if they did, people on the right and in the center of this country would have eviscerated them. So it wasn't politically expedient, so they did not do it. Number two, they want it as a wedge issue. But I would ask the Dreamers to look at the member that you came with tonight and ask them why they didn't fix it.
Well, you bring up a good point. What he's talking about, as an example of lack of respect for this president and his immigration policies, Democratic lawmakers have decided to put a face on the negotiations happening in Congress over, dreamers. Those are the immigrants brought to the country as children. They're bringing, believe this or not, I'm not making it up, they're bringing scores of dreamers to the Capitol for tonight's State of the Union. Nancy Pelosi is bringing a guest. Melody Klingenfuss, I think is her name. Is just one of the dreamers. Born in Guatemala, she was brought to Los Angeles when she was 9, earned a degree in communications and political science from California State, a master's from the University of Southern California, and then won protection under the DACA. She's bringing her to the State of the Union. How about this, Nancy? How about you bring up some of those, some of those MS-13 boys with the face tats and all the rest. Why don't you bring them to the State of the Union? Tonight, when Trump looks into the gallery during his State of the Union, he's going to see a bunch of dreamers looking back with Democrats' arms around them. I mean, there's absolutely no respect whatsoever for this president, his administration, and more importantly, for the millions that voted for him.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, they put this, they try to spin everything off of the Republicans, and like I say, they could have fixed all of this. If they want to know who put the bullseye on all the dreamers, the DACA kids,
yep,
that would be President Obama. Okay, he put them on the bullseye. He put them on the bullseye with his pen and his phone. Enjoy your show, Rick. Keep up the good work.
Hey, I appreciate it very much. Long-time listener, going back to the KOA days. Well, that's cool. All right, we're going to step aside. Check your afternoon drive. I hope it's cleared up now, but 35, they had, they said construction in the right lane. Well, construction in the right lane, then a lane next to that, and a lane next to that. So on 35, one lane was getting through. That was it. And it had to be a couple mile backup. I'm sure that's, and they were putting up cones. You need to block out 3 lanes of traffic to pick up cones? Evidently so. All right. We'll check your afternoon drive, get you around the hot spots, and then back to your calls, a review of what we'd like in the State of the Union. Man, Trump can do it. He can knock it out of the park if he wants to. But if he comes in there stoic and, well, can't we all get along? It's time for Democrats and Republicans to break bed, and all you dreamers come up here, sit on my lap, let's talk about where you've been and where you want to go. If you do that, you're done. You're done. They already don't like you. They don't respect you. They want you gone. All right. Your call straight ahead on News Talk 820 WBAP. right, 2:50 the time. State of the Union tonight. Trump's going to leave the White House with his motorcade, take the short trip across town to the U.S. Capitol. There, he's going to be greeted by an assembly composed of both the House and the Senate. Who cares? Do I sound cynical? I do, don't I? A little bit. I don't care who's going to greet him. You know, hello, Mr. President. Here, let me. I don't care about any of that stuff. The pomp and circumstance, you can stick it in a pipe. Nobody cares. You know, what we're trying to do is get the country back on track. You know, Democrats are boycotting Trump's State of the Union address. We all know about that. Democrat women in Congress, this is mature, are going to be wearing all black at the State of the Union. Those that don't boycott it, if they show up, they're in mourning for the country. All right. Obama's breaking new ground with his attack on the broken political system. You know, look, I don't care. Just go in there. Forgive me. I don't curse on the air. I try not to, but go in there and kick butt. Go in there, kick butt and take names and then call them out. That's what I want to see. Well, that's not very, that's not what we do. Well, what is it that you do in the nation's capital? Well, you see, I could explain it, but you're one of the voters. You're one of them. You wouldn't understand. I'd have to spend too much time explaining. Just wait for our direction. We'll tell you where to eat, where to go to school, what to. No, I just want the president to kick butt and take names. All right. Let's go to Bob in Capel. Bob, thank you very much. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I really kind of have a feeling he's going to take the low road tonight. Now, but not very low. I mean, he can't ever do that. But anyway, I don't think he's going to attack too much as call for everybody to get together, and then he's going to set out a plan, and there's going to be a lot of boos on the plan. And the reason for this is he's got so much ammunition right now with some of these papers that are about to come out or could. And I don't think he's going to let his hand be seen to the general public in this regard. I think he's going to keep loading the gun, and when he shoots, there's going to be so much stuff like a shotgun come out that it'll have the Democrats dancing around trying to dodge stuff.
Well, I may call it a personal preference, if you will, Bob. But like I said, besides calling people out, I hope he can, if he wants to, because they voted last night after the show was over to release that FISA memo, 4-page memo. That the people have seen it have said it's going to shock the American public. I don't know, after the last couple of years, and certainly the last 8, what would come out of D.C. that would shock me. I don't know. Well, I can't think of anything. But they say it will shock the American people to their very core. Read it. Read it. I mean, you want to drain the swamp? Pull the plug. Watch it spin its way down the drain. That's fine. Read the memo. All right. Eric Bushman is standing by. Breaking news. Is that right? All right. Eric Bushman standing by with the very latest news. Also, we'll check your afternoon drive. Then when we come back, it's your reaction just hours away now from Donald Trump giving his first State of the Union speech. What's going to happen? I mean, that's anybody's guess. It's Trump, right? Your call straight ahead in the court of public opinion on News Talk 820 WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 3:03 the time. Where are my manners, guys? You let me go. I've been talking about, the State of the Union for the last hour. And what about those people? What about those people that, long for the days of Barack Obama? I mean, I haven't done anything for them. I mean, don't let me go that far without putting something on the table for everyone.
We need the same level of commitment when it comes to developing clean energy sources.
Yay! Whatever he said, yay!
Look, if anybody still wants to dispute the science around climate change, have at it.
Okay.
You will be pretty lonely because you'll be debating our military, most of America's business leaders, the majority of the American people,
and
almost
Frosty
the entire
Snowman.
scientific community, and 200 nations around the world who agree it's a problem and intend to solve it.
Yeah, those nations around the world with a 5th grade education. That was for the people longing to see a Democrat give a State of the Union. Let's go to Matthew in Richardson. Matthew, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I had a quick question for you, and I was hoping you could give me an answer. I've been doing extensive research regarding the memo that's going to be released, and I keep hearing conflicting things on the news and other sources.
Like what? Like what?
One of them, who wrote it, essentially, is what I'm trying to get down to, because I can see that the Democrats are already trying to spin it as the Republicans wrote this memo. I'm watching Ralph Norman that was on Fox a few days ago. He said that the Republicans didn't write it. Sarah Carter, I've heard her say that, but now I'm hearing Pelosi and all the rest. Even Shepard Smith, as we speak on Fox, is saying that the Republicans wrote it. So I can't seem to get a straight answer on what that is. I was hoping you might be able to sort that out.
Well, yeah, it was done by.
Have to wait and see.
It was done by the International Surveillance Department in the FBI.
Right.
I mean that's as a matter of fact. Let me get back to that just for a second because
sure.
Where is it? Here it is. Okay, here we go. It's now been in the last, I guess, 3 hours. Let me get who it was. 2 senior FBI officials have now reviewed the memo because, abuse of government and all the other kind of stuff. Surveillance program during the 2016 presidential campaign. The officials couldn't point to any factual inaccuracies. The 2 officials, one from the FBI's counterintelligence division, the other from the legal division, as you might expect, followed up an initial review of the memo. It's kind of rare for them to do that on Sunday, but they did on Capitol Hill. The House Intelligence Committee, voted last night along party lines to release the memo. As far as the named individual as to, the document, I'm not sure that that's been released.
Sure.
The FBI didn't comment on the memo, the review. The senior Department of Justice officials told Fox that they dispute the characterization, but that no inaccuracies could be found. So for them to know that, it had to come from, I would assume, a division that they have access to.
Right. It's just amazing to me that they're already, even like Shepard Smith and the rest on the news are claiming.
What did Shepard say, just out of curiosity?
He's talking about how the Republicans wrote this memo and they were set to release it, but they would not release the Democrats' counter memo. He almost was alluding to the fact that they're not being fair and how they're proceeding with this.
Oh, really?
And he was stating it almost like as if he thought it was fact that like Nunes sat and wrote down this memo to just be damaging to the Democrats, and then they wouldn't vote to release their memo.
Oh,
and I knew that wasn't right because I have heard. I've heard
it's not right.
Counter to that.
I think there are several people involved. I don't know their names, but it's being referred to as the Nunes memo.
Right,
but that's
that's not correct.
No, he didn't write the memo. He pushed for its release. I'm not exactly sure what Shepard Smith was referencing. The House Intelligence Committee, they voted to make it public last night. Some Republicans that have seen it, they had to sign confidentialities and all that. They're saying it's shocking surveillance abuses at the Department of Justice, but at the same time, the committee voted against making public a Democrat drafted counter memo. Now, I don't know who wrote that one either.
The thing that worried me is that if the truth as far as where it came from is, I think, pivotal, because I already see it as a Democrat narrative that they're going to start pushing that, even if they're kind of blurring the lines between really who wrote it. But as long as they get that to stick in people's minds that this is so partisan, a Republican sat and wrote that. Ralph Norman, for example, there's a video of him on Fox, South Carolina congressman, and he specifically did state that it wasn't a Republican drafted memo, that was uncovered due to the investigation Nunes did.
Through the DOJ, right. I haven't seen any, the precise contents of the memo, we don't know. It's believed to contain allegations that the FBI did not explain to a court, a clandestine court, that some of the information in it used surveillance warrant applications for Trump advisor Carter Page, partially funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign. Obviously, if it's made public, you got to make public who drafted it. Or if it could have been a third party taking all the information from the investigation and putting it down. But still, you need to know who did that.
Right.
As a matter of fact, we have, see if you can find any name as to the drafting of the memo. I know where the memo came from. But as far as who took part in drafting the memo, I'm going to check that. I'm going to check that for you during the show, Matthew. But, I don't see anything, that jumps out at me other than, information from the DOJ, information from the FBI investigation and so on. Matthew, I appreciate the call very much. Ron in Dallas. Ron, thank you for waiting.
Hey, Rick, it's been a long time since I talked to you.
Well, how are you doing
today?
I'm doing well.
I'm doing great. Hey, I had an idea for tonight's speech. The Democrats are inviting all their dreamer friends to sit up in the balconies, and I thought maybe Donald Trump should invite a bunch of ICE agents. I'm sure they could find some available seats in the balcony, too. A bunch of people willing to give up their seats, at least.
Well, there's been some news reports saying the Dreamers are throwing caution to the wind and taking a chance by going to the nation's capital, implying that somebody's going to grab them up, I guess.
I guess. And as far as what Shepard Smith says, he might as well go to work for MSNBC or one of those, because he does not fit in at Fox. He is as liberal as they come.
Shepard Smith has never been one of my favorites. Just simply, I won't say his liberal tendencies, but he never seems to give me concrete answers to questions. It's just sort of all around the park with this guy. It's, well, this could happen or that could happen, or I guess if you don't know, that's better than just guessing. I just never have been a fan of Shepard Smith.
No, I worked at Fox News for a while. I did on-air graphics, and I got to tell you, running into him, he does not like conservatives.
Well, there you go, fair and balanced, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a liberal in there someplace.
Oh, and they got one.
Well, if he ever gets tired of Fox, I'm sure CNN or MSNBC or Headline News or just about any of the alphabet channels be happy to hire him.
Oh, yeah, and he can go talk about Russia to his heart's content.
And listen, Ron, I appreciate the call very much. Going to step aside very quickly. Check your afternoon drive on News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 18 minutes after the hour, 3:18 the time. Did a little checking, and I knew about this, but it doesn't really answer the question entirely. Representative Trey Gowdy, he wants that memo drawn up by the House Intelligence Committee. So there's, as much as I know, the House Intelligence Committee drew it up. He was involved in the process. He says he wants it to be released so the American public can find out just how much the Trump dossier, here we go, drove the FBI's investigation into the Trump campaign. Now, keeping in mind that Trey Gowdy has seen it, Gowdy has said the American public deserves to read the memo composed by Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee, and see for themselves the role Democrats played in coming up with the dossier. So the House Intelligence Committee members took the investigative documents and came up with the memo itself. Trey Gowdy went on to say there's nothing in this memo the department is not already aware of. If you think people want to know whether or not the dossier was used in court proceedings, whether or not it was vetted before it was used, whether or not it's ever been vetted, if you are interested in who paid for the dossier, if you are interested in Christopher Steele's relationship with Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee, then you will want the memo to come out. Well, obviously, he's giving you a glimpse inside it. He added that the memo answers what he thinks are legitimate questions. And he said, I do think the FBI should look at it before it's released. I have provided that counsel to Chairman Nunes, and I think he has taken that under advisement. I want to play face-up poker. I want the Bureau to know everything that's in that memo. I think you will be surprised. It's not a hit piece on the department, and the FBI, and I would not have participated in it if it was a hit piece. He said it doesn't matter much, or it doesn't matter how much the Trump dossier, and of course you know all about that, right? That salacious document produced by a former British spy that was paid for by the DNC in Hillary Clinton's campaign. Then it was circulated throughout Washington during the election. He says it's important to know how much of it was used as a basis for a federal investigation. If they relied on it, if they relied on it 50%, it's not significant enough for the American people to know? ? He's, I don't know. I like Gowdy. I like him a lot. So it looks like the House Intelligence Committee drafted it with some participation by Trey Gowdy and perhaps others. Let's go to Paul in Dallas. Paul, thanks for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing, Paul?
Good, Rick. How about yourself, sir?
Good.
Hey, I guess I don't know. I may be one of the few pissed off Americans right now. They're talking about this, this whole memo coming out, and the Democrats are nervous, and Trump has the upper hand on this. Here's the problem: it's not going to do anything. Trump. I'm a Trump supporter. I back Trump. I think he's doing a great job as our commander in chief. I think that it's ridiculous that our politicians that elected, that they told us they were going to do a certain job, have decided to do their own thing and not do what they told the American people they were going to do. They're up there protecting their own butts. But I just don't believe anything is going to come out of this, because just like when he was running for president, he said he's going to put Hillary in prison because of, the absolute illegal actions of erasing emails and all that information with Benghazi. The government's not going to shoot themselves in the foot. I don't care what side they're on. They're not going to shoot, their own dog. It's not going to happen. It'd be great if something did come out of this, and some of those dirt bags that are politicians that are up there, greasing their own pockets, acting like they're doing something for the American people. But I really don't believe anything is going to come out of this. And honestly, it makes me wonder, so much emphasis is put on this. What's really going on that they're distracting us from?
Well, that's always the question, isn't it? The memo, and I said that the other day, okay, if the memo is this big a deal, what's going on in the peripheral that we don't know about? Maybe nothing. I don't know. But I know the Democrats are willing to destroy this country in order, if the end result is getting rid of Trump. I mean, they showed their colors on that. It was because of DACA the government shut down. Now, what politician would do that? Democrats literally shut down the government, and Trump, he didn't blink on their bluff. They shut the government down. They didn't care. They wanted DACA. I mean, it's one thing for the government to shut down because you can't make your numbers work. It's quite another thing to shut the government down on behalf of people that are in this country illegally that shouldn't be here in the first place.
Exactly. And I think what bothers me the most is I have really good friends I served in the military with that are diehard Republicans, and they absolutely hate Trump. I mean, they watched his show on TV, and they were quoting him, "You're fired," and talking about how awesome it was when he had a series on TV. But when he got elected, they hated him. And what really bothers me the most is these were American-loving veterans, brothers and sisters of mine that are absolute Democrats, and I cannot fathom to understand how after all the stuff that's come out where they've tried to throw Trump under the bus on every possible thing they could even drum up, they still, every time they do it, the mud is just piled back on them. It's like they point at something, and what they're pointing at is a mirror, and they're calling it Trump.
Paul, I appreciate the call. I appreciate the service as well that you mentioned. Maybe Trump can say something tonight that might just bring some of those Democrats over to the other side. Is there anything Trump could say tonight in his State of the Union that could take some of those moderate Democrats and bring them across the aisle so we can finally get something done in this country, not on behalf of Democrats and Republicans in D.C., but on behalf of you and me? Is that even possible? All right, 3:33 the time. Glad you're along. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. All right, we're going to continue to take your calls. How many of you know who Sanjay Gupta is? Hands? All right, everybody seems to know he is. He's the guy, the doctor that supposedly has an answer for everything, right? He did something earlier today. You may just burn down my email on this. I want you to listen to this and see if you agree. Now, science has been wrong before. And then again, you have to observe science through the filters of who's doing it, what scientist, what doctor, what have you. I listened to this and I started thinking, wait a minute. Number one, it seems like an answer to a question that hasn't been asked, or at least not asked the medical community, and they're trying to answer it. Listen to this. If you know someone that's gay, get them by the radio real quick. All right. Because Sanjay Gupta, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, is going to tell you what makes people gay. You probably always wondered.
A Better Life with Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
What do a lot of gay men have in common? There are a lot of theories out there, but what I'm about to tell you is based on solid science. I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN's chief medical correspondent. For decades, researchers all over the world have been trying to figure out what makes someone gay versus heterosexual. Of course, we know it's genetic, but beyond that, we don't really have any concrete answers. A new Canadian study finds having older brothers increases a man's likelihood of being gay. They say that it's related to a protein called NLGN4Y, which is linked to the Y chromosome, and that explains why it doesn't impact women. Every time a mother gets pregnant with a boy, the level of antibodies to this protein in her bloodstream increases. The study's author says that could alter the function in the brain, changing how the male fetus may later develop their sense of attraction. Of course, this theory doesn't offer an explanation for gay oldest sons or gay-only children. I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, helping you live a better life.
All right. Do you feel better now? Do you know, David, do you know why people are gay?
I'm still kind of clueless.
Yeah, me too. Let's go to your calls. Let's go to Jim in Frisco. Jim's been very, very patient. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing pretty well. How you doing?
Good.
I got just a couple of comments on the State of the Union, then I'll get off. I totally agree with you that that Trump ought to just come out and kind of slap him around a little bit. Democrats and Republicans. Just call names like Graham and Pelosi and that. And the Republicans need to get a spine or get out of the way, one or the other. I mean, the Democrats quit being bipartisan, 8 years ago at least, and they got Obama pretty much weaponized the entire government against the American people in the Bill of Rights. The thing that worries me more is these new wave of Democrats like Kamala Harris and places like that, gals like that, because they make Pelosi and Schumer and Clinton look like part of the vast right-wing conspiracy. I mean, they're just way more radical.
Yeah, it's Democrats are very good at one thing. That's galvanizing around each other. Whether they're right or wrong, they don't care. They galvanize around each other. And the Republicans, for a long time, the party was fractured, as you know. And it's like, they weren't trying to win anything. They were just going along to get along. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's really because their jobs were secure. They don't really have to go anywhere or do anything. They come back, and I don't know who coined the phrase campaign conservatives, but it's very right on the beam. And it's just the next Democratic government. I mean, Obama's put all this stuff in place. You get the next Democratic government, and it's going to be Katie bar the door. And unless he gets some judges in place, a lot more judges in place, and, Supreme Court, we need to get another judge on the Supreme Court that isn't completely like Ginsburg's living proof that the good don't die young.
Well, the Republicans just have to take a new tact. They are so used to, sitting on their high horse. Yes, amen, it's our way or the highway. And of course they would lose everything. And the American people, the celebrity, counter event to the State of the Union, Michael Moore and all the rest. How did this happen? We can't have this. Indeed, this happened because millions of Americans were sick of politics as usual.
Yeah, that's like I said, nobody wants the wall. Well, 50 million Americans voted for the wall. That's why he's sitting in his White House right now. And I pretty much trust him, but I don't trust much anybody else up there anymore.
Yeah, they're going to have to do something. Republicans are going to have to do something. You may not like Trump. You may not like the fact your gravy train is coming to a stop, and the whistle's blowing and the steam's coming out. But, it's a new day. The American people made this decision, not a handful of people in D.C.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, good call. I appreciate it very, very much. Let's go to Marty in Spokane, Washington. Marty, thank you for waiting.
Oh, and you're welcome, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you, so I don't mind waiting at all.
Thank you.
It dawned on me, I don't even know why we're talking about the State of the Union and what we're expecting to hear or the tone of the speech. From what I heard from yesterday on your show, we just need to call NYU and find out, because apparently the speech was last week. So, I don't know why we're even talking about it.
Yeah, did you hear that yesterday on the show?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I went and looked up Campus Reform's video and watched the whole thing, and my mouth hit the floor. And it embodies everything that we need to know about the institutions for higher indoctrination that we're sending our kids to.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary when you figure, wait a minute, these people are going to be in the workforce in 2 years?
Yeah, exactly. And they're, eating Tide Pods and doing all kinds of other things, and this is their future. But, one thing I would like to hear as far as tone and content in the speech tonight would be something between the inauguration speech and the speech he gave at the UN earlier.
Oh, that was good.
And
that was good.
Yeah, it was a very good speech, and it basically told the rest of the world to, well, I don't know how to really say it. I guess basically take a flying leap.
Well, yeah, he let them know right away. It's going to be America first, just like in your own country. That's the way you act. Why should we be any different?
Yeah, and I think What I'd really like to hear too, as far as content, I know we're going to hear the pretty much the menu that all presidents go through with military and education, infrastructure. We're going to hear all of that, but I really want to hear a rallying speech to the voting base that put him into office to begin with. And I think we're going to hear some veiled references maybe to the memo, but I think he's going to come out and put the cart before the horse and say, look, we're going to need to restore some confidence and some accountability to our federal agencies as far as intelligence gathering and law enforcement level. So I think with all those things said, I think it might come off as a really good speech and something that the Democrats are just not going to be able to wrap their heads around.
You know, I got a question, Marty. I've never asked you this, but
sure.
Okay. Marty calls in from time to time. At the end of the day, I know we want a scorched earth, take no prisoners type attitude from a president that really is not a politician. At least a lot of us want that. But at the end of the day, both parties have to work together to come to some meaningful legislation or whatever it happens to be to make it better for Americans to live, to secure the sanctity and sovereignty of the country. I don't see these two parties working together on anything, including a lunch menu for tomorrow, let alone anything that makes a difference. And that troubles me because the way the founding fathers envisioned this thing, when they set it up, was those two parties, yeah, they can rail against each other, that's fine. But we're down to the politics of personal destruction, making stories up, working in concert with the media. I don't see how the American people benefit at all with what's going on right now.
No, I don't either. And I think, and you have talked about it until you're blue in the face, as a lot of us have. And I'd really like to maybe be able to hear Mark Meckler again if you ever get an opportunity to have him on your show. But we really need to really get this ball rolling. We've only got a few states left to go before we can have the convention of states.
Right.
And I think it's the only way that we can possibly get anything done. We need standalone legislation. We need term limits. There's a litany of things that I think
campaign finance reform.
Exactly.
Campaign finance reform, term limits, which Trump did bring up during the campaign. I haven't heard one word since. But I mean, if there was ever a time for convention of states, it's now. You've got a non-politician in the White House. You've got the majority. Now do something with it.
Exactly. We can't wait around for the problem to fix itself.
Well, it's not going to. Given human beings and how flawed we all are, it's never going to fix itself unless we come together, galvanized as one voice, say we want term limits, we want campaign finance reform, we need to take a look at all the billions of dollars being sent overseas to countries that vote against us in the UN at 80% or higher of the time. Something has to break at some point. Now, I'm glad Trump's there. Because at least he's slowing down the profuse bleeding coming out of the nation's capital. But, I mean, even his own party are working against him.
Exactly. Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate you letting me be on again.
Marty, I appreciate the call. Spokane, 3:45 the time. Let's check that afternoon drive on News Talk, 820 WBAP. All right, 3:50 the time. You're in the court of public opinion. Your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. I'm Rick Roberts. Glad you're along. What's going on with my petition, guys? The petition calling for all Democrats to have a psychological exam performed? No, I'm quite serious. You're on that, right, David?
I'm taking a look at it right now.
Okay. All Democrats need to have a psychological exam performed to make sure they're not certifiably nuts. Hollywood's self-proclaimed political activist turned out in force to join in the People's State of the Union. Have you heard about this? Did you hear about this already? Yeah. It was an event planned in response to, of course, President Trump's first State of the Union address today. It was held at the Town Hall. That's a place founded as a meeting spot for suffragists more than 90 years ago. The star-studded event was hosted by Trump critic Mark Ruffalo, who once emceed the program, which focused on the anti-Trump resistance movement. Oh, man. What are these guys building forts? I mean, like little boys. It just, okay. Anyway, they talked about issues. They're attacking the ugly underbelly of Americans who voted for Trump. So really, this was more, if you voted for Trump, this was more about you than it was Trump. We're going to set our sights to continue that work in the next year, strengthen our bonds and our commitments to one another for a long time after the Trump era comes to its rightful end. This is according to one of these Einsteins. We ain't stopping with Trump, okay? Okay, that's fine with me. I mean, babble on all you want. And of course, Michael Moore was there, whose latest attempt to criticize Trump with his Broadway show, The Terms of My Surrender, they sold like 3 tickets. He said his 2018 to-do list includes the widespread, massive removal of Republicans from the House and Senate, the likes of which this country has never seen. But if he doesn't stop growing, I don't mean to be ugly. Yeah, I'm a big guy myself, but this guy, good Lord. He wants to remove Trump, Pence, and a whole disgusting lot of them. Even that's not enough. All right then, Michael, settle down, have a Twinkie, relax, don't go nuts. He said we must remove and replace the system and the culture that gave us Trump in the first place. That's you guys. That's you. You're part of that culture. He said, adding, we must also cleanse our American soul of our white male privilege. I don't know what that meant, necessarily, but if you're white, you're evidently privileged. I didn't feel too privileged in that boys' ranch I grew up in, but that's okay. That's all right. I was privileged. I just didn't know it at the time. Later in the night, Amy Schumer introduced fellow comedian Wanda Sykes. She spoke about the ugly underbelly of Trump supporters who voted him into office. Did you know you were, I knew you were a basket of deplorables. Hillary told you that. But according to Wanda Sykes, comedian extraordinaire, you are the ugly underbelly of this country. Sex and the City star Cynthia Nixon, she took the stage, calling 2017 a dark year for America. It was a dark year. And said Russian interference was to blame for shifting the election to Trump. That's dumber than a box of rocks. But see, facts don't matter to liberals. It doesn't matter. Reality doesn't matter because they live in a non-reality world. You know, it's all made up. What they say on television or in the movies, it's written by somebody else. You know, the set is done by somebody else. They just stand there and talk. They live in a made-up world, so they think everything else is that way, too. First and foremost, we need to make sure that Robert Mueller is able to conduct a thorough and unimpeded investigation. And then singers Andrea Day and Common, they sang their Grammy and Oscar-nominated song Stand Up for Something from the film Marshall. Are you getting goosebumps? You're getting goosebumps, right? I mean, this is so moving you can barely function. It was a 3-hour event. It was sponsored by various left-wing organizations, including Planned Parenthood. Wait a minute. Don't we give them tax dollars? How much of that did they spend on this? Okay, well, don't ask silly questions. Planned Parenthood, MoveOn.org, and organizers of the Women's March, which was anything but. It was the anti-Trump march. So there you go. Did you make it to the celebrity State of the Union? Man, I can't even imagine being in that same zip code. Can you? First of all, you'd starve to death because Michael Moore would buy up everything. And you'd be, unless you brought a sandwich, you're out of luck. It just, these people, even the Grammys, I'm sorry. I like music as much as the next guy. I'm watching the Grammys. These people I am surprised they can even put one foot in front of the other. And they blame it on millennials. It's not millennials. It's stupid people. You can be stupid at 50 years old. It's not millennials. As a matter of fact, maybe if you're a business owner, have you ever tried to interview a millennial? Well, some of them are pretty stand-up people, right? Have you ever tried to interview a stupid person that happened to be in that age bracket? I'll do that for you next.
Million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 5 minutes after the hour. If you're out and about tonight, you can catch President Trump's State of the Union tonight at 8 o'clock. We will have it for you in its entirety. And then, of course, Chris Kroc will take your response. And, of course, we'll be back tomorrow to get into it. I had a couple of people email, yes, Rick, I'm a business owner, and I hate interviewing millennials. I'm not here to defend millennials, other than there are a lot of millennials that are good, hardworking, stand-up people out of the military. Maybe they didn't go on to higher education. They went to work first. I think the millennials get a bad name, and they get a bad name because of stupid people that are in that same age bracket. If you own a business, I'm wondering if this doesn't sound familiar to you.
Amy, it says you are trained in technology. That's very good. Are you adept at Excel?
No.
PowerPoint?
No.
Publisher?
Not really.
Exactly in what area of technology are you proficient?
Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram, Vine, Twitter. The big ones.
I'm surprised you didn't say Facebook.
That's for old people, like my parents. That's funny.
Well, Amy, when you're working for me, you have to have those kind of research skills, because I'll send you things for you to comb through and get the answers and send them to me. So for that, you got to be really good at technology.
For stuff like that, no problem. I'll just ask Siri.
You'll just ask Siri?
Siri tell me this, Siri find me that. We're all good at getting you the answers.
Tell Siri I want you ready to go at 8 sharp each and every morning.
I don't understand.
What don't you understand?
What you just said.
You don't understand be ready to go?
No. You said 8, right?
Yes.
8 like in the morning 8?
Yes, in the morning.
Yeah. That kind of doesn't work for me. Who gets up at 8?
I do.
I Skype with my French boyfriend in Paris until like 3 in the morning. I don't even get to Starbucks until like 10, where I order my grande chai tea latte, 3 pumps, skim milk, light water, 2% foam, extra hot, but not too hot. So if it's okay, I work best in the morning at 10:45.
Wow. Amy, I don't think we're going to be a good fit.
Why are you so negative? I can sense your hostilities, and right now I am not feeling very safe. I've been here for over 5 minutes, and the only nice thing you have said to me was nice resume, which I typed all night for this meeting with you. You've given me no guidance, no validation, no encouragement, no supervision. Is there an HR director somewhere?
HR director?
Yes, I need to speak to someone. I may have to take off today as a mental health day.
Take today off? Amy, look at me. You don't work here.
Are you firing me?
Okay, yes.
Well, there you go. Have you had that experience? Okay, that you can't chalk that up to millennials. You have to chalk that up to stupid people. Just like the folks out in California that did their alternative to Trump's State of the Union. They called it, what was it, the State of America with Michael Moore and a bunch of musicians and Sex and the City Act. Yes, that's them. That's who they are. Forget about millennials are not all that way. Stupid people are. But, in their defense, the government wants stupid people. Stupid people are much easier to control. They don't push back because they can't understand what you're saying. They don't know what's going on. The only way the government increases in size and scope is by more people being dependent upon them. The more dependent a people are on a government, the larger government can grow. And at the end of the day, if they treat you like a walking, talking ATM machine, well, Rick, you hate the government. No, I hate the way the government's being run. This is not what the founding fathers had in mind. This is not at all what they envisioned. And quite honestly, it's not at all what our parents and grandparents dealt with in the way of a federal government. I mean, you've got U.S. state representatives, like, what's his name? Cedric Richmond. He's an American politician in the Democratic Party. He's been a U.S. representative for Louisiana. I think his district covers most of New Orleans. Did you hear what he said? Now, where's the factual information to back up? This is a U.S. representative from the state of Louisiana. Listen.
President Trump's racist rhetoric makes the country less safe for people of color by encouraging and emboldening and pandering to those who wish to do harm to others based on the color of their skin.
Okay. All right. Mr. Richmond, with all due respect, where did you get the basis for that? Cite your source. I have to. Cite your source. Tell me where you got all that. I have yet to find anybody, and if you know, please tell me. What has President Trump said that has made you think he's a racist? All right? That's all I'm asking. What did he say that that guy's a racist right there. I mean, it's pretty easy to tell a racist if you're around them for any length of time. And everyone that hates this guy, Trump, has been reporting on every sneeze that comes out of the guy. So where is it? David, I've been asking you this. What is it that Trump has said? And the reason I belabor this is because it's just like Jesse Jackson, which has been in studio more times than I can count, or just about any one of the usual suspects. Calling everything racist diminishes the seriousness of true racism. So what is it that has been said by the president where everyone and their dog is calling the president a racist? What did he say?
I think that he's just honest and he calls it like it is, and people don't like that. But it's not racist.
What did he say? Did he say, I don't like black people?
Never said it. Okay. I've never heard it.
The closest I've heard him equated with racism, they don't like, when I say they, I'm talking about the Democrats, don't like the word chain migration.
Right.
Because they say it demeans people during the times when they were chained to the bottom of a boat as slaves. Chain migration?
I get that.
I don't even see how you make that assumption.
You don't make the assumption of it, but
chain migration, if you go into economics or accounting, there are certain chain qualifiers if you get from A to B. Chain migration just means one group of people chained to another group of people, chained to another group of people, and that chain migration means you can pull them all in to where you are, which is the U.S.
Right, and I get it. And also, chain as in a family is if I came here, then I get to bring my chain of family to follow behind me.
That's what I'm talking about.
But it's not racist. Far from.
Well, that's what I'm asking. What is it, and let me just ask the audience, what is it that Donald Trump has said? Even if you support the guy, what words has he spoken that some could construe as racist? Because I think I've covered this guy pretty much. And except for that, what was it, South Carolina? Are there people on both sides, pretty good people? He doesn't know. He wasn't there. But what has he said that has labeled him a racist. I hear this continually, yet I never hear any specifics as to what he said. All right, 4:14 the time. Your call straight ahead. All right, 4:19 the time. This is Jim in Arlington. Jim, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Jim?
Thank you, Rick. How you doing?
Good.
It's a pleasure to speak to you. I heard the comment you said, and I tried to call you once before, but I couldn't get through. And you said, I don't understand why all these Democrats, they talk about race. And I want to make a comment. The reason you don't understand is because you're white. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's something patently wrong with this country when a white man can walk up in a theater and kill 12 people and get a fair trial. A black man with a cracked tail light got 4 bullets in the back, and nobody seems to think it's a big deal.
Wait a minute, Jim. That's not true.
Yeah, well,
I mean, no. You say nobody thinks it's a big deal. Of course it is.
Let me finish my comment,
All right,
and
go ahead.
I'll break it down.
Sure.
Nobody seems to think it's a big deal. The only way they got any time out of that case, they had to take it to federal court the way they did in the 60s. And I think it's a sad state of affairs. And here's the problem. Since you said that you don't understand, let me explain it to you.
Okay.
Every time there's an unjustified shooting in this country, the white people on the right side line up on one side of the fence. The black people line up on the other side of the fence. With the white folks, it's always justified. With the black people, it's always unjustified. And what we do, we move on and we never get anything solved.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me comment. First of all, when you say nobody cares, that's not true. Nobody's wrong 100% of the time. No one's right 100% of the time. You know, I have a lot of family that's in law enforcement, and I know they don't get up in the morning thinking, okay, I need to go find me a black guy. As a matter of fact, they're getting up in the morning hoping nothing really severe happens so they can come home and cook outside and pat their dog on the head and hug their kids, just like you.
Okay.
And let me finish. And when you have a bad cop, there is no way that you could dislike that bad cop any more than another cop. Because when a bad cop does something, it indicts every police officer and puts a target on their back, as evidenced by the ambush killings we've seen all over this country. So while nobody's right 100% of the time, nobody's wrong 100% of the time.
Okay, but you know what? You don't make it any better when you start making comments and saying to a white lady, well, you don't have to worry about getting shot, ma'am. You're not a black male. You're white.
Who said that?
That cop down there, I believe it was in the South.
Well,
I think it was up in Georgia.
if a cop said that, that's ridiculous.
Hold on. Well, no, Larry Elder and a bunch of his right-wing friends went on there and said, hey, he was making a joke. Hey, well, a lot of African Americans hear that stuff, and they take it serious the exact same way when a lot of white people listen to you, they say, well, you know what? If it wasn't true, Rick Roberts wouldn't have said it.
Okay, well, let me set it straight for you, not just for you, Jim, but for everybody. The quickest way to get shot is to don't do what a police officer asks you to do, and then try to take his weapon and put your hands on him. That's the quickest way to get shot. I've been stopped many times. And as long as you keep your hands on top of the wheel, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir, unless you've got an outstanding warrant, you'll be on your way in about 10 minutes.
Okay, and I agree with you 100%. And I think if a police officer gives me an instruction, I should do what he said, and I think you ought to do what he said. But I'm going to tell you something else, too. I don't think if I'm going back to my car, I ought to be shot down in the back. And a passerby who just happened to have a video camera see the police officer walking over there and planting the taser.
Okay, but see, Jim, you're cherry picking instances and then saying, I don't think this should be going on. Well, nobody else does either.
Wait a minute, Rick. I'm not. You can call it cherry picking. I'm saying if it wasn't for those videotapes, we wouldn't even have that.
Jim, here's the thing. You can take specific instances where cops have made a mistake. They're people, they're fallible, they're going to make mistakes. And there are some cops out there that are bad people. They don't last very long because the good cops don't want to be indicted by their actions, so they get rid of them. They try to wash them out. Nobody wants to get shot one way or the other, but the fastest way to get shot is try to fight a cop. And you should get shot if you're trying to fight a cop.
Well, you can get shot if you stop with a cracked tail light and you turn around and walk off and they say you grab for his taser. You're saying that I'm picking specific instances. That's exactly what you're doing. You're making my point.
No, I'm making generalizations. Generally speaking,
you're saying that
Jim, I'm not. Look, I'm going to try to be as calm as I possibly can be, Jim. White cops aren't out hunting black people. You're picking up a couple of things that have occurred tragically that 99.9% of other cops would agree with you. It's a tragic thing and it shouldn't have happened, but it did. It did. And you also have to realize the more aggressive the public becomes with law enforcement, the more aggressive law enforcement becomes. Those guys have wives and children, and, they don't want to get killed on the job, and they've been killed by things you wouldn't even dream of. Little old ladies, all kind. When I worked out of the sheriff's department, the worst I ever got was a lady about 5 foot tall and a butcher knife coming through the screen at me. At the end of the day, Jim, what you are saying, to use your rhetoric, you are saying there is a prejudice against black people by white cops, and they're going to get shot if they get half a chance. And that's not true. That's not true. You can cite certain instances, and I agree with you. They're horrific things. They're horrible things, but they're not the standard order of the day. That's not what they are. There are horrible things that have happened, just like Ferguson, Missouri. The Obama administration sent an entire convoy down there to support this punk's family. He put his hands on a cop. He tried to take his weapon. He got what he deserved. And that was after roughing up a convenience store. He was a punk. And he acted like a punk, and he got shot for his trouble, which he should have been. Nobody enjoys shooting anybody. That's not the case. But they want to go home to their families, too. And every once in a while, you're going to have a bad cop, and I tell you, the good cops hate them worse than you do, because it makes them all look bad. But to say that, there's some kind of systematic, let's go shoot black people, that's just simply a false narrative that's driven by Black Lives Matter and a bunch of these other fringe organizations. And just because Barack Obama tried to legitimize what they did doesn't make it correct, doesn't make it accurate. Jim, I appreciate the call. I hope you call again. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, welcome back. I was thinking about that last call. It must be very depressing to believe what that man believes. It just must. It must be a very depressing state of mind if you think all cops are out after black people. But he's not the only one that believes that. I got an email, if the so-called good cops hate the bad cops so much, why don't we hear of more cops crossing the invisible line, blue line, to tell the truth about what is wrong, that bad cops are doing? The so-called good cops are just as bad, blah, blah, blah. Jay, you are a moron. You are. I don't know what to say. If you look truth squarely in the face, and it doesn't line up with your way of thinking, then it's not truth. At least according to these people. And Jim, man, yeah, there have been some bad things happen. And things that can't be justified. Things happen. But I promise you, police officers, men, women, black, white, short, tall, fat, thin, are not getting up in the morning and trying to decide what black people are going after over their toast in the morning at breakfast. They're just not. And quite honestly, to be fair, I get those reports all the time. Well, your officers discharge their firearms more in this community, which is a minority community, than any other place. Well, firemen usually go to places that are on fire. And police officers will probably discharge their weapons more often in high crime areas. I mean, I feel bad that you feel the way you do, Jim, because while there have been some horrific things that have occurred, you're laboring under a sad misconception. You are. All right. Enough about that. Let's go to your calls. Let's go to Michael in Dallas. Michael, thanks for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing, Michael?
Hey, okay. How you doing, Rick?
Good.
Hey, I just want to share a story real quick. I'm a pastor, and I did a Bible study.
Okay, I'm getting Michael, I'm getting a ton of feedback. You don't have your radio on or any of that.
Let me turn my Bluetooth. I had it on the Bluetooth. This the thing is that I did a Bible study, and we were talking about grace. And this lady, her and her husband had a son who had cerebral palsy, really bad. And their marriage, of course, when that happens, it breaks up marriages. Well, long story short, the husband did walk off, left her with her son and the daughter, and the mom was really, really, really hurt. I mean, she came to our Bible study, and we just happened to be talking about grace. It was the first time there. And I'm telling you, man, she left, didn't come back, and she made it understood that she didn't believe God would ever forgive her ex-husband for that. And my point I'm trying to make is that I don't like the term African American. I'm a Black American. I was born in America. And what's going on, whether, I know how people feel, that's in their heart, but it's unforgiveness, which leads to bitterness. And you have this faction of people who won't allow the nation to heal. Now, there's still racism. We're not discounting that. That's because of sin. We're not in a perfect world, but there's a group of people who have been brainwashed. And that gentleman said he was a little older than me. I'm, 51. He may have been in his mid-60s, I guess. But the point is, at some point, you have to let go of that pain and that anger. And every time something flares up, you can't immediately think that everybody wants to cause a genocide among Black Americans. I grew up in the West Dallas in the projects. We had nothing. Today, I have a business degree. I have a great job. I'm a pastor of a church. There's racism in America, but it didn't prevent me from achieving what God blessed me to achieve. And I think so many people have their eyes on the wrong thing. And I think as a nation, we need to encourage people to look forward. Stop looking behind. You can't see where you're going when you're looking behind. Look forward. I would encourage Jim, he needs to start looking forward. Tell his children, his grandchildren to look forward. Stop looking back. If you focus on all the hurt and pain, that's all you ever know.
Well,
I just wanted to share that.
Michael, I appreciate the call. It's the reason I am so hard on Jesse Jackson is because I know what he's like off the air. I've been with him many times. Al Sharpton, the same one. Those are the purveyors of hate. They keep hate alive because once the hate goes away, once, the ill feelings go away and people actually start working on getting along, those guys are irrelevant. There has to be strife. There has to be hate. There has to be distrust. People have to look at people out of the corner of their eye to make those men relevant. Those self-appointed, spokesmen for an entire ethnicity, which, I don't know who elected them, but the government did the same thing under Obama in a lot of ways. That I talk about Ferguson. At one point, I thought, Eric Holder went down. I mean, The White House never sent Eric Holder or anyone else to a fallen officer's funeral, but yet they go down, they throw this cop under the bus before the evidence is even in, and it turns out he wasn't guilty of anything, but his life's been ruined. For every one thing you can come up with another. We need to stop with the personal anecdotes, look each other squarely in the face, and tell ourselves we're going to find a way to get along. And we generally do, unless politics is injected or an agenda or a narrative by someone, and it's usually for a vote, and that's wrong. I appreciate the call very, very much. Please don't be a stranger. If I got time, yeah, let's go to Jim in Dallas. Jim, thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing fine, Rick. Hang on, you're on speakerphone. All right. Long-time listener, big fan. I couldn't agree more with what you have been saying about doing what the police order you to. I have a son that's 23 now, but back when he was 16, he was stopped by some of the police in the local municipality for not signaling 75 feet before the stop sign.
Okay.
And they took him to jail. Spent the night in jail, Rick. I went and visited him when he's in jail. But it was a trumped-up thing. But when his mother and I went to look, we're divorced, but when we went to look at the dash cam video, mysteriously one of the videos was not able, it was missing. And one of the local investigative reporters then wound up getting involved in it. They immediately dropped the charges. The investigative or the missing film showed that, it was trumped up, but I had taught him, if you ever get stopped, first thing you do is stick both your hands out the driver's side window and don't move. Don't scratch your nose. Don't scratch your ear. Don't swat at a mosquito. You do exactly what they say. And the video showed one of the officers continually putting his hand on his pistol, on his gun. And if James had been stubborn or not done that, then he could have been shot. He could have been killed over not signaling on a stop sign. But you have to do what the police say. What? They're out there, like you say. I've got family. My dad was a Dallas cop after World War II. Got a lot of relatives and friends in law enforcement. They're the only thing keeping us from going over the brink, Rick. And if they're not there, we're all in deep trouble. But you've got to do what they say, whether you trust them or not. But one of the guys pointed out that they're being taught this. They're being taught to suspect. They're being taught to hate. And like famously, Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, if hatred for law enforcement goes away, then they're no longer relatives.
They're going to be fighting. They'll be fighting over the want ads, trying to find another job. Look, I can tell you. Well, maybe it's just your family, Rick. No, I'm sure they make mistakes every day. But that's a very tough job. Not everybody is wired to do it. You lose friends sometimes when your husband or wife is a police officer. It's like all of a sudden, you've changed. No, you haven't changed. It's just a different job. And they want to go home at the end of the shift and play with their daughter and the dog and cook out on the weekend. At the end of the day, you listen to Sharpton, you listen to Jackson, you listen to Black Lives Matter, you listen to these people that don't have any vested interest in us getting along. They only are relevant if we're at each other's throats and distrust each other. That's the only way they're relevant. 99.9 times out of 100, if you're innocent, you don't know whether they got a call looking for an assault perpetrator in a car, just like you don't know what the situation is. So if you don't know and you're not a bad guy running, just sit there. Well, I think he was rude. Okay, well, his inflection or his tone is, something you can ponder later. Just do what he tells you to do. You'll be on your way. All right. Jim, good news that your son is doing well. I appreciate that. 4:45 the time. Your call straight ahead.
Cannot allow, teaching my kids or even practicing every day. If you turn on the TV every day, you see black on black crime like crazy. And I don't see anyone from the left protesting and making a big deal out of these issues that we're having with black on black crime, but as soon as the police officer that's risking their life every day mix themselves up with one bad apple that's in their bunch, then it's all over the news. There's black neighborhoods right now that you can walk down, and it's a roll of the dice if you're going to make it out of it. But you'll get a corrupt police officer, maybe one in a million. It's just time for us to wake up and open our eyes and stop blaming everyone and start loving yourself first, and you can love everyone else.
Well, I couldn't have said it any better than you just did, Jim. The reason I pointed out, there have been horrific accidents in some case, missteps by police officers. They're human beings. They're not robots. They're going to make a mistake. But it's almost like the current mentality in America, we're going to be the judge, jury, and executioner before the evidence is even in. These are people that put on a uniform, put on a badge to stand between you and the bad guys that would come to take your stuff or worse. At least give them the benefit of the doubt until everything's in. As soon as a white cop discharges his firearm in a black community, the activists are out in force. Here we go again. It's white on black. You don't even know what the evidence is yet. If it was a mistake, it's a tragic mistake. But I guarantee you, 99.9 times out of 100, those cops are out there to protect you, not to victimize you. All right. God's blessings on each and every one of you. Whether you agree or not, that's always my priority. I'll be back tomorrow at 2. We'll have a lot to talk about. The State of the Union tonight, President Trump's first. You can hear it right here at 8 o'clock on News Talk 820 WBAP. And then Chris Kroc will, he'll take your calls, your comments. All right. Have a great night. See you tomorrow on News Talk 820 WBAP.
That's the only way I know. Don't stop till everything's gone.